Hey everyone, I'm Kunal Bajwa.
And I'm Lance Jordan.
We are two nerds who decided to start a podcast in 2020 due to the pandemic. No topic is necessarily off the table, and we'd like you to join us in hearing our thoughts on various topics, ranging from anime to Zeppelins. We have it all. Here we go. Alright, fan peeps, how y'all doing? Hope you're having a wonderful time in this paradise that we have right now in 2020. It's pretty baller. You got the face masks, we got curbside delivery, we got it all. Lance is so happy he's laughing.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting world we're living in now, you know, with the face mask. I'm not getting political on it. I understand the necessities of it. I wear mine. I hope everyone is wearing theirs, staying safe out there in this corona-infested time that we're living in. Quick shout out to Kerwin Bajwa for coming on and doing a 2-part episode of They Need a Hobby podcast. Came on and talked some wrestling with us.
And I was able to follow it, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, you followed along really well.
Thank you.
You didn't miss a beat.
I tried.
You name dropped Yakuza. And
What's your deal with hating on my game, man?
I mean, it's okay game.
That game has not hurt you at all.
In the bigger scheme of the WWE universe, you found a way to drop Yakuza in it.
Hey, it was already dropped in there, so you don't have to get... You don't... Hey, Yakuza did nothing to you. You're just...
No, I'm just being a hater.
Hashtag why.
So, any other shout-outs before we get started?
Definitely want to give a shout-out to my friend Kiana Rochelle, who made our graphic. She's starting up her own webtoon now, and please go check her out. You can look her out on Instagram at WTF Kiana. All the information will be on there. She's doing some awesome work. It's got some themes of mental health and her own personal adventures thrown into there, from what I understand. She's great. She does great things. She draws great. She doesn't believe she draws great, but she does great. Trust me. She made a cartoon version of me and Lance, and it looks phenomenal.
Yeah, she's definitely someone I would like to hear on this podcast to, you know, kind of see her journey through the art world and where she's hoping to go next. So, you know, definitely big shout out to her, and hopefully we can get her on the podcast.
Yeah, we'd love to have
in
her
the
on.
future. But let's get into the first.
Let's do it.
Segment, news worth talking about. So, well, we can think of it as any streaming service, really.
Yes.
But Disney Plus, they're offering Mulan the movie, the live action movie, for $30.
I'm shaking my head because I'm like, you are already making us pay for a new streaming service, and now you want us to pay $29.99, which just come on and say $30.
Yeah.
$30 for a live action version of a movie I will probably watch.
Yeah.
But why do I have to pay the extra $29.99? Is it because they're shooting during COVID? Is it just because they're Disney? I don't get it. I am happy that Jet Li's in it.
Jet Li's in it?
Yeah.
Where's Jet Li in this movie?
He's playing, I believe, the father.
Oh.
Yeah. It's great because it's good to see him back in roles. He had some health issues for a while.
Yeah.
And now he's back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were interviewing him recently, and he's like, I initially didn't want to do it, but he has like 3 or 4 daughters, and all of them were like, you have to do this. And he's like, well, I can't say no now.
Right.
And so he went in, and he's now going to be in that. And it's good because he was a big action star growing up for me.
Yeah.
Classic Romeo Must Die.
Yes.
One
of his best movies.
Beloved by a lot of minority backgrounds, including myself. And he's known for the Once Upon a Time in Chinatown, Chinatown, one of the two, and a plethora of their movies. He's a very, very, very skilled actor. Nixon wanted him to be a part of his entourage at one point. So, fun fact there. Random ass fact there.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely random. Back on subject.
Lance loves working with me.
I do. But I mean, $30 seems a little steep for anything, really.
Yes.
Especially when you're already paying. I think this is because of COVID. You know, we can't get into the movie theaters. I think what these companies are finding out is there's no real set timetable they can set this year to get us into the movie theaters to see these movies. So I believe this price is a way for the companies to make money basically off of this $1 million movie they just filmed. And I think this might become something going forward.
Yeah.
Not just for Mulan, but like...
until they get a vaccine that properly works.
Yeah.
Which I've heard potentially will come out in the spring of 2021.
Yeah.
So we've got a bit more time to live in paradise. So that's fun. But yeah, it does make sense. I'm not thrilled about it, but I get it because this is how it's going to kind of survive. It's kind of like why restaurants, the only way they're going to survive is by doing curbside.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, from the St. Louis aspect of it, I've seen many of people going out into these restaurants and enjoying themselves, bringing family members, even like young kids. I think it's getting to a point where we're so fed up that no matter what it is, no matter how dangerous or how crowd consuming the area is, we're just going to do it anyway. I think as a society, maybe not like you as an individual, but I think people want to be out. They want to be social. They want to be in these places. I mean, I think some restaurants will survive. Definitely like mom and pop places might be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen people come like open more and more to dining, and especially like dining outside.
Yeah.
Which, that's good. I believe that's within normal COVID rules.
Mm.
But like bars and everything opening up in the Midwest, especially in St. Louis and stuff, is where I go, no, we need to not do that. Like we can't.
They've enacted a curfew now for bars.
Yeah.
It was like 10 p.m.
Something like that. Yeah.
And then like even some bars that were like downtown that didn't abide by the social distancing rules, they got shut down.
Yeah, I heard about that. The only reason they got shut down is because I think someone Snapchatted it.
Really?
Yeah.
They Snapchatted the whole party.
They Snapchatted the party and everyone's like, well, damn, I thought this was going to be like illicit pictures, but instead I have to go shut down this place.
Right. Imagine being the FBI agent, like disappointed.
He's like, just disappointed. I was looking for something else.
For naked pictures, but here you are in a crowd full of people.
And now I got to go shut it down. I was like, great. I was...
Moving on.
That's the segue for it.
Right. Other news. So G4. So we've heard the news by now that they're returning in some capacity.
In the way that like they had a lot of the, who I like to call alumni from that group. So Jessica Chobot.
Mm-hmm.
I think Blair Herter. I didn't see Kevin Pereira post anything.
Yeah.
And he was like the heart of G4 in a lot of ways sometimes.
He was the dude on Attack of the Show, right?
Yeah. He was the co-host on Attack of the Show. They put him with Olivia Munn.
Okay.
They had really good chemistry in terms of like delivering on screen. But when I think of G4, he's one of the guys that I remember. Adam Sessler.
Yeah.
Morgan Webb. X-Play. But they did it in a very innocuous way. They throw up just like a 30-second teaser or something like that. And they just said, we never stopped playing. And every kid was like, oh my God, and freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see like what they're going to do because that was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is kind of insane. Like, it's kind of like Toonami. Like, I love it.
Right.
I have fond memories of it. It doesn't work in today's world.
Toonami doesn't work in today's world?
Because of how everyone does streaming.
Yeah.
Everyone does streaming, so there's no... It's like TGI Fridays where they had like the lineup of this, that, and that, and you always had a host or something like that. And Toonami worked like that too. Tom would punch in the buttons, tell you like something super insightful and great to say. And then he would hit ding, ding, ding. And then you just see the new episode come on for Yu Yu Hakusho. And it worked. But now everybody streams. And unless we return to some sort of format that works for that, I don't really know if it's going to work like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I want it to be successful, and I think it can adapt and change, but I'm excited. They had some great stuff on there. A lot of those people have become successful in stuff that they've done independently.
Would you like want to see like the old shows return, or would you like to see some new shows? And this is just me thinking, like, I feel like G4 now would work better as like a YouTube channel.
Yes, I agree with that.
And like just
I agree with that.
Putting out content like that.
Yeah, X-Play has to come back.
X-Play does? Okay.
X-Play has to come back. Attack of the Show would have to be changed up, but it could work.
Yeah.
I mean, they just essentially are talking about news, so they would be like a live feed. They would have a section on there called the feed and everything and go from there. That could work. Working on technology, looking at technology, thinking about that, talking about that. That's totally fine. X-Plane Attack of the Show were the two big ones. Cheaters and does not count.
Cheaters, cops.
And cops do
Does
not
not
count because that was the death of G4. They were just slowly dying at that point. Icons. Icons needs to come back. That was a great show. I really loved it because they just gave you a whole documentary on the entire setup. Yeah, the Icons need to come back because they would give the background of everything.
Yeah.
And there was no problem learning about this and that. Like I know about the background of Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, how Nintendo started, Capcom. They did a great job on that. You can actually find some uploads on it on YouTube.
Okay.
If you're interested. That show needs to come back. What else do you remember?
I remember the show, and I don't remember the title of it, but it was like, they showed like game trailers, and then they just showed videos, I guess just like animation videos that kind of look like games that could possibly be out there.
That rings a lot of bells, but I don't remember the name.
I don't remember the name. And then another show that I remember was getting introduced to Ninja Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
The original one.
The original one where it was like Captain Nagano. Yeah, the only guy that I ever really remember winning that, who always had a smile on his face, was like in his 40s and did it. Captain Nagano. I remember once he finished it with 10 seconds to remain, and you just see him like keeled over, just like breathing really hard with a smile on his face. It was a lot of cool stuff, and that was before. I hate to be one of those people back when no one cared about it, but it was totally one of those things where there were times where they had no one win. Because the courses were that hard. In Mount Midoriyama, time to fight. To see he will be the Ninja Warrior. They had a lot of cool stuff with that. And it's interesting to see now because now it's kind of a diluted version of what it was. I hate to be one of those people that says that, but it's true. No disrespect to anyone who is a Ninja Warrior, but compared to what it was when it was timed, and especially with how hard the courses were, like it was incredibly humid where they shot it too.
Yeah.
It was a different Ninja Warrior back then. And that needs to come back for sure.
Yeah, should definitely.
Cool. All right. So today's episode is going to be about Civil War, specifically the comic book from Marvel. We both held off on talking about this because it was still pretty raw and everything that was going on. It was only our third episode. Because as we were preparing for this, we both kind of agreed there was no way we could not talk about George Floyd and the instance that were going on with social progress movements that were going on in the world right now. Because the entire topic of Civil War talks about what does it mean to be a hero and what does it mean to be an enforcer of the law or a custodian of the law. So I want first off to say that, of course, Black Lives Matter and there are good police officers out there, but I do believe the system does need to get re-examined and fixed and altered. Too much is laid on for cops. So going forward, those are kind of where I'm coming from. Lance, do you got anything you want to add?
I think you kind of nailed it. So, this comic deals with, these heroes who essentially the government wants to put at cops and have their actions sanctioned and basically actually being able to control them. In today's society, I think you kind of see it with the protests recently. Cops who are for Black Lives Matter and are more willing for a version of defunding the police. And I think it's important to understand what people mean by defund the police.
Right. It doesn't mean no police.
Right. It doesn't mean no police, and it doesn't mean stripping the police of their funding so they operate with less, but it just means taking some money and putting it into other services.
Right.
I think it's just important to understand that, there are cops that want to help, and then there's cops who
do not.
I mean, in all honesty, or they're handed the power, and unfortunately, you don't know how to use it.
And of course, the issue here is it is a very complicated situation. I've heard reports of cops standing up and saying, this is wrong, you can't do that, or something like that. And then pretty quickly, you never hear about them again.
Yeah.
Not in terms of them getting killed, but in terms of them getting fired. And so, often or another, if you do say something, then you might lose your job. Then great, you made the situation worse. Then more quote unquote racist police are still in power. Then what do? Do you pick your battles? Like, how do you play this? It's kind of like the Untouchables, where almost everyone is corrupt or paid off by the mob. How does Elliot Ness take down one of the most ruthless crime lords out there? He tries to find people that he can trust. And of course, that's a movie, and I'm digressing a little bit, but it's very hard to do that, to be a police officer, even if you want to protect people instead of, abuse your power. We wanted to say that right off the gate with talking about this, so that there was no confusion. And of course, if you guys do want to say something, feel free to shoot us an email or something like that. We can talk.
We are two people who are willing to have a conversation, willing to have a dialogue with our fans, our friends, because that's what you guys are our friends. We might not share the same viewpoint on things, but, we're willing to listen, we're willing to debate, argue, and we're willing to learn also.
Yeah, there's not everyone knows everything. It's impossible.
Right. I feel like some of these things we say today, some of it might be true, some of it might be a little bit inaccurate just because of our knowledge on the subject.
Or oversimplified.
Yeah, or just super simplified. But I think it's important to listen, to have these dialogues.
Kind of go from there.
From there. Yeah. So with the Civil War, it was a 2006, 2007 comic book event from Marvel. It was the introduction of what would be known as the Superhuman Registration Act.
Right.
Before this, the things leading into the Civil War was Avengers disassembled. This was the end of Avengers as we knew them, and this spun into the event House of M, where Scarlet Witch eventually uttered her famous words of "No more mutants," wiped out half the population of mutants, where a lot of mutants got depowered. Scarlet Witch herself was killed, Vision was killed, and Hawkeye was killed as well. So after that event, there was a new Avengers formed with Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Luke Cage, Spider-Woman, Sentry. Basically, they were acting as the Avengers up until the Civil War. And so the Civil War, created by Mark Millar, the guy who did Kick-Ass and a bunch of other Ultimate Marvel comic book series.
I didn't know he did Kick-Ass.
Yeah, he is the guy who created Kick-Ass, the comic book series.
Right, yeah.
So this starts with the New Warriors. They are a group of reality TV show based superheroes, younger heroes without the proper training. But in order to get their viewers and followers up, they go looking for supervillains. And so in the very, beginning of the comics, you see these heroes go to a residential area to go confront the supervillains living in that area. And what ensues is a huge brawl where
it gets super messy.
Yeah.
They try to infiltrate a house. It's almost like a bunch of teenagers that want to prove themselves, who pull out a bunch of selfie sticks and record them trying to be courageous, and it ends up just, pun intended, blowing up everything and in their face.
Yeah, because Speedball fighting Nitro sends him right next door to a school where Nitro, the supervillain, has the ability to basically detonate, and he ends up killing 600 people. Among those included was
a group of school children.
Yeah, a group of school children. Reading back on that scene and looking at it, it kind of relates to an issue that happened in today's society with Breonna Taylor and the whole
no knock
warrants.
Yeah.
It kind of raised the question to me, when to act, when not to act, because in the situation of the Civil War, a smarter, better trained group of heroes like the Avengers would have known possibly not to engage in that situation.
Or would run scans, maybe use satellite imagery would pick up intel. We would come prepared.
Right. We even see that, and I think they even kind of referenced it in the comic, is like how they would have handled it differently, you know, why this failed, because they were like a group of kids that beforehand they were kind of harmless. They were doing their TV thing.
Right. It wasn't a big deal. It's like, whatever, we have bigger fish to fry.
Right.
Yeah.
So that happens. And then like in today's society, we have the thing with Breonna Taylor where the police, and now, you know, we're hearing more about the story.
Right.
And they're saying, you know, they had the warrant, they bust in, and her boyfriend fired the shots. You know, the police fired back in retaliation and killed Breonna Taylor.
That is actually a piece of news I didn't know about.
Oh,
yeah.
That the boyfriend.
Yeah, I thought it was just the police entered and then they unloaded on her.
No, it was like, because the boyfriend fired because, well, you know, he heard someone coming into the house that
so, not knowing
forcibly who was there. And the boyfriend wasn't the person they were looking for. They were looking for somebody else entirely. This wasn't the house that the information told the police that this is where this guy lives. This was like, okay, we've seen this guy at this place before. Let's go raid it.
Gotcha.
And so I think the consequences of this is just a failure to do your research, do homework, or to even like do the proper prepping and like information gathering. Because I feel like if you would have done that,
right,
you would have never broke into that home, took this woman's life, and then, you know, what follows is them basically like trying to cover it up in a way.
Yeah. And there's been no arrests as of right now. And it's been since March.
Right.
Something like that. So it's kind of odd because this episode really did hit home with 2020. It brings in the question of like, you know, do we have levels of heroes? Do we have an A team and a B team? Do we have people that like, okay, fine. People who have, and this is where I really push my nerd glasses up.
Yeah.
If you have Omega level powers, do you fight Galactus? Are you the A team?
Yeah.
If you're like Daredevil and Luke Cage, are you not the B team, but maybe a lower threat level where you're just taking down crooks who are doing muggings and stuff like that? And say if you're Spider-Man, I think you'd be on the same level, actually.
Yeah.
And international arms dealers, I guess, would probably be more up like S.H.I.E.L.D's term. I don't think S.H.I.E.L.D. needs to be involved in neighborhood stuff unless there is a connection or something like that. So appropriate response to the situation is something that definitely needs to be taken into account. They actually try to do that at one point in the comic, I believe. It eventually devolves. And also a key player is missing in this. He's in hiding or something like that. Like Nick Fury is gone.
Yeah, he's in hiding.
Do you remember what he did? Or
after this whole event, you see him basically trying to put together like a covert team of heroes.
Okay.
That go handle missions that the other Avengers are like, while they're too busy fighting themselves, there's another group somewhere, you know, causing trouble and like plotting against the world.
Right.
That's Nick Fury's concern. In a lot of ways, he's, I guess, concerned with almost a bigger picture than, hey, who should go tell you to go beat up this guy or that guy?
Yeah, he's got kind of bigger fish to fry. He essentially is the CIA on crack. And he will do, you could probably argue whether or not he is a good guy or quote unquote a bad guy. And that's something we will talk about in this episode as well.
Yeah.
But he is more about keeping the peace in the entirety of humanity. I think they say it really well in the first Civil War movie. The reason I bring it up is because, first of all, I'll watch anything with Samuel L. Jackson. Number two, I'm glad he wasn't eaten by a shark. Number three, I will say that there's this distinct moment where it's like, hey, Fury, why do you have all these old Hydra weapons? And he looks at the rest of the team, and he, without looking at the person he's pointing, he points at Thor. He's like, because of him. He's like, his entire powers and incident in New Mexico leveled a town. With no RPGs, no grenades, no satellite help, no drones, nothing. With just a shiny-ass hammer. And that's a legit concern.
Yeah.
So I understand where Fury is coming from. It's not that he's doing things that I get why he's doing them. It's a concern like almost on the galactic level that we have to consider threats that we aren't ready for. And sometimes that means, doing things that aren't the most moralistic. The world is complicated, like we were saying earlier.
But I feel like in a lot of ways with this event comic eventually spinning out of the, New Warriors doing what they did, there comes this superhero registration, where they're like, all right, in order to operate in the United States, you're basically going to have to play by our rules. You're basically going to have to become a police force. Basically we call the threat in and we'll assess the threat and we will send the proper response to the threat.
Right.
Instead of you going out on your own, making your own decision, and then going out and, dealing with it however you see fit. So that divides the hero community. So
right.
You have Iron Man, who's ready to play ball, who's ready to work with the government.
And he's guilt-tripped into it as well.
Yeah.
Because of collateral damage. And the collateral damage was a young boy, and his mother basically, justifiably so, really pounds it into him as like, you caused the death of my son. And that hits him really hard. So that's also part of the reason why he's pretty gung-ho about it in the first place. And
then Captain America choosing the other side. I think his response initially was...
You remember, he's a man at a time. He saw and fought and punched Hitler in the face multiple times, from what we hear. So he knows the real threat of Nazis. He has seen and breathed. He has experienced fascism on the worst level, on the level that we parody in movies, that we parody in our media everywhere you go, that when someone's being uptight or kind of crazy with, certain things, they call him a Nazi. That is our statement for everything. We have an idea of that. He knows what that's like. So he sees this as a fascist response. And he's like, well, Tony, if the government tells us who's right and wrong, then what's the point in doing this? The whole reason he is a superhero is because he's not restricted by laws. So he can go out and take out threats that he deems to be a problem for people. This brings in the argument, and shows the complexity of the argument. Is like, well, what makes those threats good or bad? What makes those threats necessary for you to deal with? Even Cap's not, in my opinion, doing the right thing either. Because what is your circumstance for saying something's right or wrong?
It's kind of a weird situation that they get placed in, and it's kind of, it's still like this argument to the day, and it was an argument during the time, and then even on the video game when you have to choose a side, Iron Man or Captain America. But who was really the bad guy and who was really the good guy? Because I feel like Tony had some good points for wanting heroes to be registered. It's not a crazy idea.
No, not at all.
For us to say, maybe don't blow up the block to stop a group of bank robbers,
Maybe we can, do a surgical strike instead of just destroying the entire place.
Right.
We can do something like that. Then that's the problem with the two sides of extremes. Everything's seen as either or. There's no...
Yeah.
We can't dial down the meter at all. And it ends up being just like, oh, who are you siding with? I'm like, neither. Because these are both insane. These are both ridiculous. Sure, we could have some sort of registration. Maybe registration is the wrong word. But we'd have some sort of community where you could sign up and get help for how to control your powers.
Right.
To be like, okay, and we do have to assess, what if they go rogue? What's our contingency plan if they do something? The Xavier Institute does a really good job of that. And like you were saying, what's their role?
So in this comic, essentially the X-Men sit at neutral. There's a side comic dedicated for the X-Men, and basically at this time, Emma Frost, she's basically leading the X-Men along with Scott. And basically she is saying, we're neutral, we're sitting out. And it's funny too that the X-Men, they always get compared to minority groups in today's society. And they're basically we've been, prosecuted by your people. We've been told when and where we can do things. restrained and sent to these camps or whatever.
It reminds me a lot of Malcolm X.
Yeah. But Emma Frost is like, so we're sitting this one out. Don't bring it to our door. This isn't our issue.
Right.
Because at the time, the X-Men never operated as superheroes for real because of that fear from the people, which is also like another weird thing to think about.
There's a lot of layers.
In some ways. Because it's like, why are you afraid of the X-Men but not afraid of even though they are afraid of the Hulk, but not afraid of Thor, you know?
Yeah.
So, but essentially they're like, we're out of it. We're not in it.
Right.
This isn't our issue. So you guys figure it out.
Does T'Challa say anything? I've forgotten.
Another side comic stars T'Challa getting married to Storm, actually.
This is when he get married to Storm. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and Cap.
Black Panther, by the way.
And they're getting married in Wakanda, but it's a neutral ground. But he's like, I'm an Avenger. I want my Avenger friends to be there. So you see Cap and Tony go there.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, like there's a lot of neutral parties. Another thing too is I didn't really like his role in this comic for real because I'm a big Spider-Man fan. But
yeah, it makes no sense why he does what he does in this comic. I appreciate these types of comics because it's a thought experiment and you get to see like, what if this happened?
Yeah.
This kind of is paralleled when the Injustice series, which I've read and I've played the video games, so I know almost everything that happens. It's also a very multi-layered and complex answer to what goes on. But I'm like, everybody jumps on way too quickly in that version and in this version. And it makes no sense that Peter Parker, the guy who's worked so hard to keep his identity secret, to protect his wife and aunt, why the hell would you go on national news and reveal who you are? The only thing that made that part like digestible for me was seeing J. Jonah Jameson's reaction of fainting. That was like, okay, I don't mind it for that.
Basically having a heart attack.
Yeah, basically. Because he was like trying to find out who he was the whole time. He was right in front of him. This mild-mannered reporter.
That worked for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so wild because if you read Spider-Man comics, and even like looking outside as a reader, you know how big Spider-Man's supervillains are.
Oh, yeah.
You know how dangerous they are. They're some of the top villains in the Marvel Universe.
He's a big deal. He doesn't get enough credit. Like, Cable, Cable is like, when he comes from the future and he meets Spider-Man, and he kind of looks at him. Peter's like, what's wrong? He's like, I never thought I'd actually meet you. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, in my time, you're the Captain America of my childhood. People look up to you like the way they look at Captain America in this current timeline. Yeah. And he's supposed to have trained the strongest and best mutant ever, which is like Scott Summers and Jean Grey's daughter. Yeah. He trains her in Kunlun because Danny Rand's like, yeah, you can borrow my apartment kind of thing. And just train there. So he's a big deal. Yeah. He's a really big deal. He's the reason why Marvel honestly is as good as it is right now.
Spider-Man is definitely the biggest superhero in Marvel, maybe the world. I mean, I'm willing to debate that. But for him to reveal his identity makes no sense. I mean, a part of me was getting it because when I was first like understanding the Superhero Registration Act, I kind of took it as like, okay, finally heroes are going to get paid for what they do.
And in let's a way. Be honest, like the dude needs money.
So. Yeah. So, I mean, like I got that, but then like, he quickly learns the ramification of those actions because everyone starts hunting him. Right. And then
he gets the crap beaten out of him.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to watch. It's hard to read, honestly. Because he just gets ganged up upon by four of his
villains.
Four of his top villains, and they mop the floor with him, man. It's hard to watch.
And I think he's one of the heroes that pays most from this. Even, coming out of this event, the trials he has to endure now because he basically backed out of his decision to register.
Yeah, before we go on that point, he does get that sweet Iron Spider suit.
Very nice costume.
Very nice. Makes him actually like move around like a spider, but he, like a champ, does throw it away. He's like, no, it's not worth what I'm doing. Yeah, and everything, and he joins the underground.
But did you like see, speaking on this, and you have it here, like this cowboy diplomacy.
Right,
So
yeah.
like, did you see some merit in Captain America's side?
I do. His philosophy works if the government lets you do what you do and is cool with you, if your relationship is really good with them, and also the fact that they're kind of like, oh, okay, he took out that threat, that's okay, we'll let it go, kind of a thing. What I'm trying to say is like, it works when the threat is mutually understood as a threat by everybody. Like an arms dealer killing children, I doubt a whole lot of people would be frowning about that.
Yeah.
And this arms dealer is not doing anything positive. But oftentimes you'll find who we will call dictators are more complex figures than you think. Even like the definition of dictator is someone who takes power at a very tumultuous time and then gives it up. They talk about that very famously in the second Dark Knight movie. And it's a callback to ancient Rome. And what happens is that once the dictator keeps power, then it's a problem. There's an example I heard where in the 90s in Africa, where there was who we would call a dictator, Said Barre, and he had done some things and he was marked by the Americans as being a dictator. But he also did some really good things. He nationalized a language, gave women the opportunity to learn and read, and said figures in that government were not happy with that. They were very conservative and radically religious, and opposed him. He did go and murder all of them, but like there were things that he did that were productive for the environment. I'm not saying he was a hero or a villain. I'm saying he was very complicated and did some great and terrible things. And we don't really have a name for that, aside for like human being. So cowboy diplomacy works as long as everyone's cool with what you're doing. And typically that's not the case.
Yeah, and I mean, if we relate it to what's going on to today's society, I feel like, unfortunately, at some point, the majority of people were cool with how the police operated.
Right.
And I think that goes down to because before social media, we knew it was going on, but we didn't see it. It wasn't so in our face.
Right.
And I think what we have now is this abundance of evidence and information being loaded into us that we're not cool with it. We're not okay with it.
And also the fact that add a layer onto that where no one had a choice but to watch everything was COVID.
Yeah.
COVID has been the best and worst thing for our society. It stopped us and made us like, we have no choice but to watch this. We have no choice but to read into this. We have no choice but to wake up to this.
Yeah.
And even for me, for some things I had to address. And that's okay. That's part of growing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's what I meant by cowboy diplomacy. That was a long-winded explanation on my part, but that's what you get with this podcast. Yeah, so what really kind of struck me the entire time was near the end, Steve Rogers is a great soldier tactician. And so he's able to eventually get the winning hand against the registration side. And as he's winning, as he's fighting, he's about to attack somebody, and a bunch of civilians just grab him and pull him off. And he's kind of shocked, and everyone's kind of just like, they're very shocked and surprised, and they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, you can't harm them. It's not right. And that's when Steve realizes he's lost everything. He's like, we're just fighting amongst each other. We're no longer fighting for justice. We're winning everything except for the argument. Right. And he takes off it, like, it's a very symbolic moment where he takes off his mask and drops it. And Spider-Man actually says, what are you doing? We were winning. He's like, we were winning everything but the argument.
Right.
Everyone stand down. And everyone just kind of looks at him, and he's like, that's an order. And that's where it ends, right there.
Yeah.
Which is really, really something. And it just shows you how idealistic he is, even when he's made tremendous mistakes. There's something to respect about that. Yeah, what'd you think?
That's a very interesting point that you brought up. And I kind of wonder when in today's society, really the government, when are they going to say, here's the thing, like, they're kind of winning everything. They control everything. They're their influence is everywhere, but I feel like I'm wondering when they're going to be like, we're winning everything except for the argument at this point.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the voices of the people are so loud at this point that they can't ignore it.
Yeah, they kind of have no choice.
Yeah, you can't ignore that Black Lives Matter. Like, and I think you see that with a lot of these companies now. Like, you know, I work in retail, so like a lot of the retail companies are, you know, echoing Black Lives Matter, posting it on a website, posting it on their social media.
Yeah.
I mean, how you feel about it is
one
thing.
You wonder, like, are they saying it just so that no one believes them? Or are they saying it to actually mean that? And it's probably a combination of both.
It's probably a combination. And I mean, there's more things that these places can do, but I feel like now more than ever, there's pressure on the government to concede that, you know, changes need to be met.
Yeah.
And, you know, the only way these changes are going to be met is by looking at themselves and looking what they're doing wrong. And so, I mean, I feel like that happened in the comic with Steve.
Yeah.
You can keep fighting it forever and nothing will get done. You know, nothing will change. Nothing will get better. And the people that he swore to protect are now against him and now telling him that he's on the wrong side of this argument.
And as the backdrop as this is happening, like, a city block is basically getting destroyed.
Right. And, you know, that was the initial issue, wasn't it?
Right.
Like,
well, you just leveled a city block. That's actually something I didn't realize until now.
Yeah.
Until talking about it out loud. Like, as they started the comic, a city block gets destroyed. And as they end the comic, a city block gets destroyed by small little squabbles here and there.
Yeah.
I think there's one point where they're free falling and they're like, grab somebody and use them to fall on, and they're just like destroying buildings as they go down. There's the classic scene where like he's punching someone in the pavement, and it's insane. It's insane. Like, they have like, that's why Steve kind of like stops and looks around. He's like, we're just doing exactly what we said we wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. And that initial argument in the beginning where Steve is like, you know, if it was us, we could have controlled this better. We could have done better. We could have done better. But then, you know, coming full circle, he realized that, well, shit, we didn't do better.
Yeah, we made it worse.
Yeah.
And there is resolution to this, I believe, after a point. Not to give too much spoilers, but could you delve into that a little bit? Like, how is this all tied together at the end?
In the end, we are left with, I feel like a compromise in some respects, because I feel like another thing too, and another point is sometimes we choose things not because it's best for, you know, me or you, but we choose it because it's best for the entire group.
Right.
I remember there's a comedian, Jim Jeffries, who says, we should all be able to drive a car as fast as we fucking want, but we have to operate as fast as our slowest person.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So with this, you know, the superheroes have to operate within this realm because not all of them are trained. Superheroes are getting younger and younger, and their powers are getting more immense. Not everybody's Spider-Man and, you know, shoots webs and does kung fu for all intents and purposes to fight. You know, there's new heroes that popping out with laser beams.
Like, these are legit concerns where someone sneezes and you could destroy a house if you're not careful. But instead of incarcerating them right away, maybe like, okay, let's try to figure out how to control your powers.
Right.
Let's make it easy. Let's make it easier for you to live with who you are instead of shame you and hate you and do all of that.
And so, like, the consensus is to register, work with the government, and operate within that network. And so the consensus for the other side is, if you don't want to agree with it, that's fine. But just know that you're essentially breaking the law. You're a criminal at this point.
Okay.
And so don't operate or register. So at the end, they're kind of left with that decision. Spoiler alerts. Other events happen, and then, you know, there's another threat, and they're all united, and we all forget about the Superhero Registration Act.
I mean, yeah, and that's kind of how most world wars ended. They're just like, yeah, we got bigger fish to fry. let's get together and end this, and then we'll touch back with this later. I do want to say, to kind of scoot back to one point with that both of these sides are very extreme. I don't understand why Tony Stark doesn't pour more money into social programs. Sure, there will always be villains. Sure, there will always be like people who do evil things. But a lot of that could be avoided with just like proper schooling, proper healthcare, housing, like you name it, it could help. And I don't understand, with all his wealth and everything, he just uses it to fund his exploits, where he has plenty of money to throw into social programs and help neighborhoods out. He's just accruing more wealth. He's not really doing anything with it aside from building really cool Iron Man armors. Which, let's be honest, if you can call your armor and it has nanotechnology, that's fucking great. I totally want one too.
Super cool, but I mean, the same can be echoed with society today.
Exactly.
With why aren't we pouring more resources into our neighborhoods to make them better? Because I think that's one of the first steps in kind of improving just the whole climate, the whole situation. And I think that's what mainly, well, at least when I read and how I understand defund the police, is to like take money and put it into the schools so we decrease crime. Right. You know, we grow up with alternative options other than to do these things that, you know, label us as a criminal.
Right.
So I think that's a really good question, why Tony doesn't, in his world, pour more into the communities, and why don't we do that today?
Yeah. I think the answer is because said people would lose power, and that's something they can't live with.
Yeah, man. I think
that's
we've died on this cross long enough.
I do want to say that, you know, thank you guys for listening. Know that there's more. We've oversimplified a lot, and we just had a discussion where we touched on a few points. Not everything was said, and definitely we don't have all the answers, but we can at least, I think as a society, we can at least try. And I know this episode got super woke, or at least tried to be, but this is kind of where we are, and this won't necessarily be a political podcast, but these are our viewpoints. I'll say that.
All right.
And maybe with all those viewpoints, we'll finally get a gosh darn Holly. All right. Thanks for listening.
Hey, fan peeps. Thanks for joining. And as always, we appreciate any feedback. You can follow us on our Facebook page, They Need a Hobby, and also at TNAH Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Hopefully one day we'll find a hobby and maybe even be one of the cool kids. Peace.
So this event kicks off with a group. Sorry, I'm going to wait to the...
This is why...
All right.
That's why I'm ready to move.
There will be a lot of editing in this.
Amita, we love you.
Right.